Hello and welcome back. It's the middle of the week, so we're checking in, and I've got good news. We are getting ready to begin in-person worship at the church at Westview Baptist, and that will begin on Sunday, September the 13th at 10 in the morning. You will be getting more communication about that over the next week in terms of how to register and what to expect. You'll either be getting that by mail or by email, but stay tuned for more information about that. Now, as we think about getting back together, I need to acknowledge, first of all, that not everyone is going to join us, and we understand that. That's okay. Depending on how comfortable you feel, you're going to make that decision, but we will continue to offer online worship for those who aren't ready to gather in person with us. But for those of us who are going to gather in person, and for those of you who aren't, you can listen in as well. This has to do with you too. I wonder whether we're going to recognize each other. Now, I don't mean because it's been so long and will we remember what each other looks like, and I also don't mean because we're going to be wearing face masks, so how can you recognize anyone with those on? What I mean is that we have a faith that invites us to grow and allow God to change us from who we are naturally into who He created us to be. And I wonder how much you've grown over the last 5 months. It's easy during hard times, it's easy even just in regular life to get stuck in a rut and to try to keep things the same when God actually wants us to be stretched and to grow. You know, I think about Joseph in the Old Testament, in the book of Genesis, a young man who was sold into slavery by his own brothers. And then years later, we find this in chapter 42, his brothers come to where he is in Egypt and where he has become the second most powerful man in Egypt, and they're looking for a handout. Now, they don't recognize their brother Joseph, probably because he was wearing different clothes, Egyptian clothes, probably because he had his face done up with Egyptian-style makeup, as was the fashion for wealthy and powerful people then and there. But I think that there's more to it than that, because as we continue through the story, we see that he is different. Now, arguably, when he was a young man, he was a bit arrogant. His father treated him as the favorite, and he was unafraid to let his brothers know that he was the favorite. But now, as he's one of the most powerful men in that part of the world, he treats his brothers, well, he tests them, he puts them to the test, but once he actually introduces himself to them, he reveals who he is, he invites them to come and to share the abundance that he has found and helped to safeguard in Egypt. He's very generous with them. But then their father dies. And in chapter 50, the brothers get scared. They come to Joseph ready to bargain for their lives, basically. And Joseph stops them. And in verse 20, he says, "What you intended for harm, God intended for good." Joseph had changed enough through the years. He had been shaped by God through the years to recognize that God was doing something very different from what his brothers were doing. And that even though his life wasn't what he would have chosen, God was doing this for a reason. And Joseph was able to recognize that. And as a result of seeing God's hand at work, he was able to be very gracious to his brothers. Joseph had changed. Because of his faith in God, he grew during those hard years. And he was difficult to recognize. So how much have you grown? What has life in the midst of a pandemic done to stretch you, to cause you to look for God more, to allow God to shape you in ways you wouldn't have expected? How hard will it be to recognize you? I hope it will be a little bit hard. I hope we'll be noticing things about each other that are different because we have changed. And I hope that that will help us, spur us on to greater growth together as we go into the future. We have a faith that was meant to be grown into. And we want to continue in that faith, to continue following the Lord Jesus Christ, living the life that he has brought to us by his death and his resurrection, because life in Jesus Christ is worth it.